underground gambling operations, international money laundering, and Wigglytuffs for the low price of 2,680 coins. We have got a story. The villainous gangs of recent Pokemon games have been about as potent as watered down soy sauce, but some of the older organizations did things that would give a Golurk the goosebumps. From disrupting entire ecosystems to looking to break the universe to trying to kill children, to, of course, getting everyone hooked on games of chance, including you, me, and those guys, in order to fund further villainy. Come on, just one more flip, please? What people may not realize is that Team Rocket's gambling operation is modeled after a very specific type of business linked to the Japanese mafia and other sketchy characters. Or they simply may not know just how deep into the darkness that rabbit hole goes. Today's mission is to peel back the mystery around that connection and also learn a little bit about one of Japan's strangest, sketchiest pastimes along the way. So join us as we delve into the dark reality of Team Rocket's slickest op. But first, before we begin our investigation, we have one other mission: to save the bloodline of the Titan Warriors. Because today's video is sponsored by Bloodline Heroes of Lithis, a strategic, visually stunning gacha game about collecting champions and conquering kingdoms with one of the most unique RPG game mechanics I've seen yet: multi-generational mating. Yes, you heard me, mating. I know that the most cultured of you are probably already downloading the game for free from my QR code or the link in the description. Enjoy the special starter pack worth $20, but here's a little bit more about how the system works. Basically, as you build your kingdom, you pair your champions with waifus or husbandos to crank out customized mixed blood champions. And it's awesome to see how the hybrids inherit not just the talents and traits of their parents, but also their unique appearances. Additionally, you can acquire unique hybrid champions known as Bloodcraft Legends by racking up points in the seasonal guild wars. There are over 1,000 possible hybrids with new bloodlines coming out every fortnight. And I'm especially loving the game's newest bloodlines, the Titan Warriors, the Enforcers of the Iron Wheel of Olympus, and the Nine-tailed Vulpins, who come from an eastern land of mysterious power. Bloodline is a diamond in the rough, and speaking of diamonds, you can get 3,000 diamonds, 10 free summons, and abundant resources simply by logging in every day during Bloodline's 1-year anniversary event this month. Even better, you'll get a free legendary female Titan Warrior if you are one of the first 30 to leave a comment with your Bloodline account ID on the pinned comment below. So use my link or scan the QR code to snag the game for free and receive a special starter pack. Have a blast, and thank you to Bloodline for sponsoring today's video. Anyone who's played the early era Pokemon games probably has fond memories of hitting the slots at the Celadon Game Corner or the Goldenrod Game Corner, or memories of playing Voltorb Flip in the rejigged Korean and Western versions of Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. But to zero in on the Celadon Game Corner, at a glance, this playground for grown-ups looks like your everyday casino populated by vacuous VLT zombies. But there is a darker truth lurking beneath. And no, I'm not talking about the enormous Pokemon trafficking operation that is literally lurking beneath. Firstly, we should note that in the generations 1 to 4 games wherein the Kanto region is accessible, the Celadon Game Corner actually has 2 separate buildings. The larger Game Corner building where all the action happens, and the smaller Prize Corner facility next door. When you beat the slots at the Game Center, special coins are deposited into the coin case that you received from a gambler in a nearby restaurant, and actually have to be taken outside and into the Prize Corner to be exchanged for Pokemon, TMs, and so on. What is not as obvious is that the Game Corner Prize Corner setup was inspired by a $150 billion industry with ties to the Yakuza and the world's most dangerous rogue state. I am talking about Pachinko. In 1907, all gambling activities in Japan were declared illegal, including casinos, and aside from a few notable exceptions such as public sports and lotteries, this stance shut the door on Western-style casinos as well as other gambling activities for over a century, effectively pushing all other forms of gambling underground. However, ambitious entrepreneurs and business-savvy mobsters were quick to find a loophole through which they could set up not gambling facilities, but gaming facilities that contained mechanical games known as Pachinko machines, inspired by the Corinth game children's toy of the 1920s. A Pachinko parlor looks like a gambling facility, it functions like a gambling facility, people gamble at Pachinko parlors, they get addicted, they lose money, they destroy their lives. It's a serious problem, like gambling, but a Pachinko parlor certainly is not a gambling facility. At least, according to the Japanese government, which is more than happy to let these parlors exploit gambling law loopholes in exchange for billions of dollars in tax revenues every year. After all, Pachinko is Japan's #1 leisure activity, with revenues exceeding tourism, restaurants, and sports. It is a cash cow like no other. As for the legal loopholes, one of these is built directly into the Celadon game corner. But first, let's talk about the Pachinko machines themselves. A Pachinko machine basically looks like an upright pinball machine, but instead of trying to keep a large metallic ball alive in a game of skill, you play Pachinko by loading Coke ball-sized spheres into the machine, then launching them into a labyrinth-like playing field, manipulating the launch speed with the hope that your balls will fall into catchers that trigger payouts of additional Pachinko balls that can be redeemed for prizes, or if you have the balls for it, plugged back into the machine to take shots at scoring even more balls. Balls, balls, balls. The long and short of it is that the goal of Pachinko is to win as many balls as you can, then redeem your balls for prizes whenever you decide to call it quits, assuming that you don't end up balling from losing all of your money like several of my former clients. Of course, anyone who's played the Pokemon games will recognize that while the Celadon Game Corner's layout mimics that of a Pachinko parlor, the coin-operated slot machines are not standard Pachinko machines, but they do resemble Pachinko slot machines, which can be found in most Pachinko parlors in real life, similarly operating on coins rather than metallic balls. As we mentioned earlier, the coins that you win at the Celadon Game Corner need to be taken to a separate building to be exchanged for prizes, which is also an obvious nod to a legal loophole utilized by Pachinko parlors to turn their gaming businesses into sustainable, legal, and highly profitable quasi-casinos. That's to say that while it is illegal to directly pay out cash as gambling, gaming winnings, clever minds discovered the perfect workaround: the 3-shop system. Whenever you are ready to exit a game of Pachinko, you simply call a staff member over to count the number of metallic balls that you have amassed and record your winnings. And similar to a prize booth at an amusement park, the parlor will exchange your winnings on site for non-cash prizes like cigarettes, bicycles, rice cookers, adult toys, grocery store coupons, etc., etc. But what about the cold hard cash? The problem is that Japanese law prohibits Pachinko parlors from paying out cash for Pachinko balls, and a Pachinko parlor's balls cannot be removed from the parlor premises to be sold or exchanged elsewhere. But this is where the Celadon Game Corner to Prize Corner model comes into play. Because what if another business in the neighborhood just happened to want to purchase the prizes that you had just won at the Pachinko parlor? It wouldn't break any of the gambling laws. And thus, the 3-shop system was born, in which Pachinko players exchanged their winnings on site for small slivers of gold encased in plastic or other identifiable prize tokens, then take those tokens to a separate, independently operated prize exchange business around the corner, usually a small hole in the side of the same building or a nearby building, a business that will buy their tokens in exchange for cold hard cash. Finally, another wholesale distributor buys the tokens or other prizes from the prize exchange business and sells them back to the Pachinko parlor. Game corner, Pachinko parlor, prize corner, prize window, wholesale shenanigans, wholesale shenanigans. And of course, TMs, live animals, and cold, hard cash. The reference is clear. And on top of that, players of Pokemon Red, Green, Blue, or Yellow, or Let's Go, will know that Team Rocket has a secret base beneath the game corner. And this is likely a reference to the fact that in the past, much of the Pachinko industry, especially the prize exchange, was orchestrated by the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia. Not to mention that to this day, the majority of Pachinko parlors are owned and operated by ethnic Koreans who entered the business back when anti-Korean sentiment prevented them from joining regular companies. Which is fantastic in the sense that everyone loves to see the hard worker who overcomes prejudice to become a success story. Except that approximately 30% of these owners have somewhat dubious ties to North Korea and were responsible for funneling hundreds of millions of yen to Pyongyang every year throughout the 1990s. In response, the Japanese police dramatically stepped up their crackdowns on Pachinko parlors throughout the 1990s to prevent money laundering and tax evasion, and the national police has since more or less pried the reins of the industry from the Yakuza, who were so influential in the virtually unregulated era, with many police officers entering the industry themselves. On one hand, this has by and large cleaned up the business, but on the other hand, it has created entirely new concerns around police corruption. Since many police officers take high-ranking positions in the pachinko industry after retiring, but at the same time the pachinko industry is directly regulated by the police, creating some pretty awkward conflicts of interest. But that is a rabbit hole for another day. Gambling addiction, mafia, rogue state connections, international money laundering, tax evasion, police corruption. That is the dark reality of the real-life inspiration for Pokemon's mafia-run Celadon Game Corner, making for somewhat of a bizarre connection to a very shady industry given that these games were targeting kids. But it's the kind of rough-around-the-edges sauce that set those earlier Pokemon games on fire. And if you want even deeper insights into the Japanese side of Pokemon, then you will love this video right here about how various rich aspects of Japanese culture have been erased from the Pokemon franchise overseas.